A soldier surprises his loved ones. After a long deployment, watch the emotional reunion. My grandmother kept this story secret for 70 years until she shared it with me just before she passed. It's about a soldier, a surprise homecoming, and a moment that changed our entire family forever. Hi, I'm Michael, and today I'm sharing my grandmother Ruth's most treasured memory, a story she made me promise to tell the world. This story takes place in 1953, just after the Korean War ended. My grandmother Ruth was 22 years old, married to my grandfather James for only 8 months before he was deployed overseas. James had been gone for 14 months. 14 months of letters that took weeks to arrive. 14 months of Ruth working double shifts at the textile factory to pay rent on their tiny apartment. 14 months of going to bed alone and waking up scared she might never see him again. The war was over, but families were still waiting for their soldiers to come home. Ruth had no idea when or if James would return. Every morning, Ruth would walk to the mailbox hoping for a letter. Every evening, she'd sit by the radio listening for news about troop movements. She lived on hope and prayers. Ruth's sister Mary lived next door with her 2 young children. Mary's husband had returned 3 weeks earlier, and Ruth tried not to feel jealous watching their family reunite while she waited alone. "Ruth, honey, he'll come home," Mary would say. "You just have to keep believing." But Ruth was losing hope. The last letter she'd received was from 6 weeks ago. She'd heard stories about soldiers who never made it to the ship's home, about complications with paperwork, about men who were missing in action for months after the fighting stopped. On this particular Tuesday morning in November, Ruth was getting ready for another day at the factory. She put on her blue work dress, pinned up her hair, and grabbed her lunch pail, the same routine she'd followed for over a year. What Ruth didn't know was that James had been planning this moment for 3 weeks. He'd arrived at the port in San Francisco a month earlier, but had been held up with debriefing and medical clearances. Instead of sending a telegram like most soldiers did, James decided to surprise her. He wanted to see her face when she realized he was really home, really safe, really there to stay. James had contacted Mary secretly and asked for her help. The plan was simple but perfect. Mary would invite Ruth over for lunch, and James would be waiting. That Tuesday morning, as Ruth was leaving for work, Mary called out from her front porch, "Ruth, don't go to work today. I need help with something important." "Mary, I can't miss work. I need the money." "Please, Ruth. It's about James. I got some news." Ruth's heart stopped. News could mean anything, good or terrible. She dropped her lunch pail and ran to Mary's house. Mary led Ruth to the living room and said, "Sit down, honey. I have something to show you." Ruth sat on the sofa, her hands shaking. Mary disappeared into the kitchen, and Ruth could hear whispered voices. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was James hurt? Was he? Then she heard footsteps, familiar footsteps she'd dreamed about for 14 months. James walked around the corner wearing his army uniform, holding his hat in his hands with tears streaming down his face. Ruth couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She stared at him like he was a ghost. "Hello, beautiful," James said, his voice cracking. "I'm home." Ruth let out a sound that was part laugh, part sob, part scream. She launched herself into his arms so hard that James, despite being a strong soldier, stumbled backward. "You're real," she kept saying over and over, touching his face. "You're really here. You're real." They held each other and cried for 10 minutes straight. Mary and her children watched from the doorway, crying too. But the most beautiful part of the story, according to Ruth, happened after the initial shock wore off. They sat on Mary's sofa, Ruth curled up against James like she was afraid he might disappear. James pulled out a small wrapped package from his uniform pocket. "I carried this for 8,000 miles, he said. "Through training, through transport, through everything. I never let it out of my sight." Inside was a simple gold locket. When Ruth opened it, there was a tiny photo of the two of them from their wedding day, and engraved on the other side were the words, "Until I'm home again." "Every day I looked at this and promised myself I'd make it back to put it around your neck," James said as he fastened the clasp. Ruth wore that locket every day for the next 65 years, until the day she died. That surprise reunion wasn't just about a soldier coming home. It was the moment that built the foundation of our entire family. James and Ruth went on to have 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 22 great-grandchildren. Every family gathering, Ruth would tell us, never take a single day with your loved ones for granted. Every moment together is a gift. Ruth made me promise to share this story because she said it represents something important. That love is stronger than distance, hope is stronger than fear, and that the best surprises in life are the ones that bring families together. If this story touched you, please share it, because somewhere out there, families are still waiting for their soldiers to come home, and they need to know that love always finds a way. This is Michael, sharing Ruth's legacy of love. Thank you for listening.